Hello, everyone. I'm Doug James, sax player off and on, and I'm listening to Mako here on Talkin Blues, and it's a great show.
First of all, congratulations on finishing your chemotherapy recently.
Well, thank you.
How are you feeling?
Feeling good. As soon as they stop trying to cure me, I feel fantastic. I'm looking forward to feeling even better. But I've been working pretty much the whole time, anyways.
Oh, really? So
Sure.
It didn't affect you in your playing?
For a little while, it was I couldn't do anything. But then, as soon as I could get out, I did that. 6 weeks, and I was ready to go.
Did it affect your playing at all?
Well, the way after getting rid of doing drugs and drinking, this is easy.
But if you don't play for 6 weeks, how does that affect your playing?
There's no question that I was weaker, and it took me a little while to get done. But you have a lot of circumstances when you're playing, and like if you play up at 10,000 feet, you have a lot less air. And so we actually played up at Lake Tahoe in California, in Nevada, or California. I guess it was the Nevada side, but that's 6,000 feet. And I really got used to playing at altitude then. It's pretty hard to get used to playing at 10,000 feet, but that was more or less what it was like. I had to get used to blowing, and that was actually very therapeutic for me because it straightened out my posture and got me breathing deeply and everything again, which is what I wasn't able to, nothing's like playing, so for me. So whatever I was doing didn't take the place of that. So I felt it was very medicinal for many reasons to get back to playing. And it's mentally too.
Tell me about the playing. I have read that your mother encouraged you to pursue music. I don't know if that's true or not, but tell me how playing happened.
My father was a Lutheran minister, and my mother played organ in the church. So when I was little, I would sit on the organ bench and watch her fingers and what happened when she played with her fingers and stuff. So that's kind of what I correlate everything to, is the organ, as the piano keyboard, the organ keyboard. And so she certainly encouraged me by the fact also that she played. So I think when you're a kid, then you know that can be done when someone's doing it. And so I think that's what a lot of people, they may not learn with formal lessons, but they learn by being around somebody. And I think you just interviewed my friend Curtis Zelgado.
Actually,
right?
we were just on the phone talking to one another. So.
Oh, okay. Well, if you talk to him anyways, but his father was an opera singer, and he never took any lessons from him, but he was around that the whole time. And so, yeah.
Was it playing the keyboards an option for you?
It never really spoke to me. I really liked saxophone and had a tenor, and then in school, when I was in high school, I actually stole a baritone sax, and I gave it back, but I stole it for a year or so. They never could figure out what happened, and then I just put it back and never told anyone. So I just needed it for a while, and then when I ran into Roomful of Blues, I don't know, I was about 18 or 17 or 18 or something like that. They said, well, we want you to play baritone sax. And I said, great, because, so that's how I started off on baritone professionally.
Is there a difference when you play the sax? Is there a big difference in playing the baritone versus the tenor sax?
Yeah, they're two different. Some people sort of play everything the same. They play the same thing on every instrument, and so it's like, oh, they could play 20 different saxophones. And it's like, yeah, da 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 da, yeah da 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 da, and then So it's just they just play the same thing. So I feel that I think of different things when I'm playing things, but if I might be said to kind of translate a lot of the tenor stuff that I liked onto the way you could do it on baritone. I did a lot of that with Arnett Cobb and Illinois Jacquette and Red Prysock and stuff like that.
But the physical playing and the way you hit the notes and the way you breathe, is it the same from one
No, that's
instrument?
definitely different. The notes, the fingering is the same.
Okay.
So, however, really to me, it's a completely different thing. So, when people say, "Why don't you play the alto and soprano?" It's like I don't have enough time for that, anyways. But I feel it's a different thing. So, I may play some of the same things, but automatically I adjust it for being a different horn.
Okay, but you also play the bass clarinet.
Well, I have a bass clarinet, and periodically we record with someone or something like that, and Duke says, "Well, let's put a bass clarinet on this," and then sometimes I do it, and I think it sounds fantastic, but then he decides, no, I just want the baritone on it instead. But we do. I have played bass clarinet on some stuff. Since I love the bass clarinet. I have a few things around the house that I just like the sound of, so I don't get to be what I consider really fluent on them, but I studied for years the Armenian duduk, and it's a great instrument. But we actually have a sizable population of Armenians in the Providence, Worcester, Massachusetts area. So I learned right from some Armenian guys how to play the duduk.
And is that a wind instrument as well?
Yeah, it's like it looks like a recorder, but it has this weird double reed, and it's just the most beautiful, haunting sound you've ever heard.
Okay,
And,
if we go back to that moment where you started to play the sax and you said you were drawn to it, what was it about the saxophone that you're drawn to, and how did it come about?
I have spent a lot of my adult life, when I'm happy, not thinking at all. So I would just have to say I don't even know. I just did, and I just always liked it. I used to hear various guys on sax that I really liked, and guys like Charles Lloyd, and with John Coltrane there was like Archie Shepp played with him, and he had a big sound. So I always liked the big sound tenor sax players.
At what point did you think this is what you wanted to do?
Oh, I never thought about that at all. That was what I was going to do. I left home when I was like 16, and I just went out in the world, and that was what I wanted to do. That was it. Now, you got to be young and stupid to think that, to do that.
If I would have met you at 16 and said, what are you doing as a saxophone player, would you be able to tell me what your goals were at that point?
No, I think in a lot of ways there are some people that really make plans and do things on purpose, but I'm not one of them. I just sort of have tried to go with whatever gets thrown my way, and it's been actually, I've been pretty lucky that way because I've had a lot of good things thrown my way. But it was never like, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. But I really like blues, and not as much. I really like jazz, and I love, at this point, the swing guys like Lester Young and people like that, who I consider really the combination of tone and not playing too much that I really like a lot.
So, I mean, was there an image of you being in a big band, or is it
No.
nothing like that? Could you have been a soloist?
A soloist? You mean like a leader of a band?
Yeah.
Oh, well, in everything I did, not now anymore, but I was always the youngest guy. And so I was very fortunate to play with people that were much more experienced than I was. So I got to learn a lot from them. And then, like with Roomful of Blues, which is really my first real professional thing, and boy, was that a professional thing. We played like every day for decades, just about, and so that was always just something that I had my own features and stuff like that, but I did stuff under my own name and everything too. But really, we were so busy with Roomful of Blues that was just what we were doing, all of us. Later on, go ahead.
But before Roomful, what were you doing?
Not a lot. I was just like 16 years old, so I hadn't really done a whole lot.
Oh, okay. And then Duke Robillard had a band, Roomful, and decided that he would like to have horns in the band.
he wanted horns there, and they needed a baritone sax player. So that's when I went to the audition, and they said, do this, do this, do this. And they had this baritone that looked like it had been in a riverboat that sunk or something. It was underwater for about 50 years, and some of the notes fell off and everything else. And that's what I had for my first horn.
And did you know that you had nailed the audition?
Oh, well, this is kind of a funny story, but I was staying in a rooming house, and I was young, and there was a bar, though, in Connecticut that, like right down the street from me, that served. I was 16, so it was 17 or whatever. So they served me. So I drank of a quart of VO, and I went down to the bar. This is the night before, and went down and played shuffleboard for beers, and I was like some kind of genius. So I was so drunk, I crawled back to the rooming house on my hands and on all fours, and fell asleep. And when I woke up, I was like, what the? And my roommate was across the room, and he was sitting there like with his arms full, and he said, do you know what you just did? I said, what? He said, you got up like 6 times last night and just peed all over the other side of your bed. And I said, oh. And that's right when Duke Robillard and Greg knocked on the door, and they were giving me this big spiel. We have a band. We'd like to audition you. And I said, listen, can you come back in about an hour? So I did all that and tried to sneak the mattress outside so the landlady didn't see it. And so anyway, so I did the audition completely, unconscious practically. And then I went back to my place, and then I went back to the same bar again the next night, and they said, how did your audition go? And I said, I don't know. They said, you don't even know if you're in the band or not? So I didn't even know. And then 2 days later, I get a call from Greg Piccolo, and he says, be outside your place at 6 o'clock on Friday. So then I knew I was in Roomful of Blues. That's how I got in. So when I say I fell into things, I'm not kidding.
Did you know what you were getting yourself into?
Not at all. First of all, and I just got a interface with a guy that I went to middle school with. If that's what 6 through 8 is, I think it. Anyways, in the United States, but anyways, like from 6th grade, and he said that I used to buy blues records, and then I would give them as birthday presents to people who didn't like blues, and then I would just borrow them from them sometime later and just never give them back. So I've been listening to blues for a very long time, since I was like 9 years old or something. And so I thought I knew everything about blues, and then when I found about Roomful of Blues, they were into so many other people from the swing era and all the rhythm and blues guys from the 50s and the 60s and stuff. And, all I knew was like Fats Domino or people like that. And so I got an incredible education from Duke of all the people out there that, Duke used to have his 78s all hanging on nails from his wall. So that I would go over to Duke's house and we'd listen to Duke's wall and listen to Lester Young and all this other stuff. It was just incredible stuff, And it was a great presentation. So, Duke was my teacher, and I just learned so much from all the stuff that he had been into, and I still do. I went over to his house a couple of months ago, and he had a 78 party, and I brought my wife along, and she's just like, wow, I never knew any of this stuff existed, but that's the way it's always going to be with me and Duke, so it's just great.
What kind of education did you have on the sax? Like, was there any formal training?
Zero.
So you go to these 78 parties and you listen to it and you go, can you just figure it out in your head how to play it?
You have to learn. Well, back in the day, now they have some very nice tools for learning where you can slow things down and do all sorts of stuff. Back in the day, you would just get very good at putting the needle right on the groove for like the 4 bars you were trying to learn, and just keep doing that and doing that. And that's how you would learn to play like these people. And it's a craft, and you get better at it. But and then for a baritone, I would try and put it on 16 instead of 33, so it would sort of take it down an octave, but it wouldn't really.
Right.
But I would sort of learn some of that stuff from baritone. But what I did with the baritone was learn a lot of tenor stuff, which it's a different range and everything else. So I would have to adopt it to baritone, and that's kind of where I got, like I said, where I got what I do.
I know that there are a few, not many, bands with horns. At that point, when you joined Roomful, were there many others?
Not at all.
Nobody
There was
else.
Tower of Power. There was us, and there was a few other bands, Chicago and stuff like that. So we had our take on things that was kind of really different than like Tower of Power. They do what they do well. Doc and Mimi became good friends of mine many years later, and it was like we're not the anti Tower of Power, but we were like a real separate entity from what they were doing. And so we would run into all these blues guys that loved to be playing with a working horn section. So we played with everybody: Albert Collins, Muddy Waters. We never played with Wolf, but we played with all sorts of people. And we played with Eddie Cleanhead Vincent and all sorts of people from that period, and really got an education of actually playing right next to some of the great people. We had Red Prysock come up to Rhode Island and played with us for a night. That was just unbelievable and stuff. So we got a real chance but we had a chance to play with everybody because they all wanted us to come up and play with them because we knew what to play.
This is the part that I don't understand is, let's say Albert Collins calls your horn section up.
Yeah.
How do you know what to play at that point? Is it charted? Is it?
No. We never had any charts with Roomful. I did a lot of the sort of arrangements or head arrangements, and I still like to do that. And a lot of people nowadays don't know that they're supposed to follow me, and they don't know what we're doing. And so a lot of guys are all taught with the same textbook at Berklee School of Music and all that stuff. So they do a certain thing very well. But a lot of what we do is really more melodic and really and bluesy, that's kind of the big separation of stuff. The sort of jazz now, quite a bit of it is not really based in the blues, which it used to be. So that's where I think a lot of things have lost their audience because they kind of forgot the blues.
And how did the audience accept Roomful? Like, was it immediate?
Oh, at first we had a guy with a fedora hat and a suit playing. Duke used to have a little tiny amp that was just like a shoebox and play an archtop guitar. Oh, they hated us. I mean, we had things thrown at us. We had one gig we did. It was at a disco, and they just hated us from the first second we started playing. And so we took a break, and it was like, wow, this is horrendous. And so we had to go on for the next set. So the manager of the club got up on stage and said, ladies and gentlemen, the band that was supposed to be here tonight couldn't make it. And so we apologize for having this other band up here, but if anybody really wants their money back, we'll be glad to give it to you. And now, Roomful of Blues. How do you like that for an intro?
At what point do you think it became an entity?
It's hard to say about all that. We kept doing it and kept having people. Well, first of all, what happened was the actual Chicago blues band guys, or the Chicago people that were like, the way I used to think about it, the Chicago blues was blues, that was it. And then, so a lot of people that were actually blues fans objected to us playing these swing tunes and stuff. So they used to say various things about it. Now, of course, all of them are listening to Duke's guitar lessons about how to play swing guitar and stuff. But 30, 40 years ago, they were all going, you bunch of pussies and stuff like that, and, playing swing music. But then, of course, the jazz guys didn't like us either because we were too bluesy. So we were sort of in between that. And then somehow they started liking us. I couldn't even say when that was, but then we started becoming like this thing, and then at that point that was like decades before like the sort of swing dance thing that happened in San Francisco and all those places. So we were doing that way before everybody else.
But you're also putting in the miles and
Oh
the hours,
man,
right?
there was one point we figured out that we didn't have an entire week off for 7 years.
No, really?
And I'm talking about a hometown gig for Roomful of Blues would be driving from Rhode Island to Richmond, Virginia, playing and driving home. That's 10 hours each way.
Yikes.
We did that stuff all the time. Play Rochester, New York, 9 hours. Drive home.
Well, you just played Albany not too
Yeah,
long ago.
I just played Albany.
Yeah.
Yeah, Albany. Yeah.
So what is that, 2-3 hours?
That's only about 3 hours.
Okay.
I mean,
But
it was, it's a long. At this point, I still don't have all my strength, so some of this stuff is harder to do than what we used to do every day. And when I played the Redwood Festival just recently, the last day I had to play. I had like 3 rehearsals, I think, and 3 gigs. So I played like 8 hours. Then I had to get up at 5 the next morning and drive down to San Jose to play Kid Anderson's party. And then after that, on the way to Sacramento Airport, Jimmy Vaughn was playing in Vacaville, so stopped in and said hello to him. And then we finally went to the airport. So this is the stuff that we used to do all the time. So it was a little more challenging, but we did it. My wife was along, and she's going, "Okay, now I get it. What you actually do work very hard."
But did you ever question that? I mean, I know that's your life, and this is how you got to be where you are, and this is how Roomful got the fans. But when you're doing 10-hour drives each way, do you ever question that lifestyle?
Well, my mother, 10 years before she died, finally said, I just realized that it's no wonder you drank so much and used drugs after all with your schedule. And I said, well, thank you, Bob. That's nice to hear. But it was just what we did. I mean, I have to say, without being some kind of a drill sergeant, with playing with Duke, you just played 100% the whole time. You never stopped. And even when Duke left, that was the way Roomful of Blues was. And people will talk about that we're in Roomful of Blues. We never had a bad night. We just killed it every night. And Jimmy Vaughn told me when I was touring with him, he said that the Thunderbirds back in the day, the Fabulous Thunderbirds and Stevie Vaughn, they were all terrified to have to play after us. We would just kill them. We'd kill them.
And you wound up playing with both of them.
Yeah, played with Stevie a lot. We did the Carnegie Hall concert and stuff like that. And with the Thunderbirds, me and Greg Piccolo and Al Copley are on the Thunderbirds Butt Rocket album, and then we did the Carnegie. We did Carnegie Hall, and then I played with Jimmy, like for 10 years, and it was just a lot of fun.
Okay, so when I was talking to Curtis today, and I had mentioned that I was going to talk to you, he said that you took him under his wing. You took him under your wings and kind of took care of him when he joined the band.
Well, I was from the West Coast, and if you go to Rhode Island, it's at that time you could go to Mars or something and have less culture shock than the difference between the West Coast and the East Coast. So I knew about some of that stuff. I learned the hard way. So I was just sort of said, this is what you do, this is what you don't do, and shut your face because you don't say stuff like that around here or they're going to beat the crap out of you. And so he followed my advice for the most part, but sometimes he didn't. And, we were all pretty crazy at that point. So, my wife, my first wife, essentially kicked him out of my house after a couple of weeks. But, that's just the way we were,
But
me and
he
Curtis
still
had
remembers it.
Oh yeah, well, it was quite a thing. We just had such a great time, and we were out there just at that point we were just having a ball. So all manner of things happened, and but the main thing was the music that night. Boom, that was it.
So when Duke quit, what did that do to the band, and what happened then?
Well, my point about, I said this to Duke the other day. You should be pretty proud that you can do something and make it so good that when you even leave, it's still really good. And because also the amount of people that came up in the New England area that heard Roomful of Blues, there's a very high bar that got set there. That's still a high bar. And so with Duke, yes, we would have, you would have thought that was over, but we continued on. We adjusted everything. We had several singers. We had Luann Barton for a while, and we had Curtis, and we had some other people, and Greg Piccolo sang, and people just, and we had Ronnie Earl in the band too and stuff. So we all it was different. My favorite stuff is still really the beginning, which is just kind of what you would like when that was the first thing when you were first really excited about everything that much. So to me, it was always and we still play together. The guys that are still alive call it the Founders, and we play with Duke and Al Copley and Greg Piccolo and Rich Latai and me, and we still play and we still have a sound and it's still good.
When you left in 1998,
No, it's 96.
96.
I was paroled in 96. I thought it was life without parole.
How did that decision come about, and what were you hoping to accomplish at that point?
At that point, a friend of mine had a hookup with this kid whose father owned the National Lampoon, who produced Animal House and the Blues Brothers and stuff, because Roomful of Blues was supposed to be the Blues Brothers. That we actually did the first Blues Brothers gig. Yeah, that's another story. I don't want to bother with that anymore. But so this friend of mine knew, and they were making up a band which had people from Asleep at the Wheel and Robert Gordon stuff playing behind this kid who was a really great singer, but whose father also happened to own the National Lampoon. So we rehearsed and everything, and I said, well, and we were going to go all over the country, and you get a SAG card, you get a lot of money, you get unemployment and everything. So I decided at this point that I wanted to make a move and do that. So that ended up crashing and burning about 4 months in, for a lot of other reasons that these things happen. The show that we were opening up for wasn't that funny, so it's a comedy show that's not funny, then you got a problem. And so then I just played with a bunch of people in New York City, and then Roomful of Blues actually asked me back, and at that point I said, sure, let's continue on. But at that point, before that, I was going to make my big move in New York City, and that didn't work out exactly like that. Yeah.
I know you've done some solo albums
Yep.
on Stony Plain. Was there ever a strong desire to be a solo artist?
Well, actually, that's a good question. And for me, like I said, I was playing with people that were so amazing. I think there's a lot of things about being a band leader that maybe don't suit me. So I just was around such great band leaders, Jimmy Vaughn, Duke Robillard, those guys are great band leaders. They really know how to keep people that are completely ungovernable in playing together really well. And so I have a chance to, I do gigs on the side and do other stuff. So like I said, that's something that I scratch that itch when I feel like it. But a lot of times I'm just sort of the guest artist with various things, and have made a bit of a craft out of just sitting in with various people. I like to just go play with someone, and don't tell me what key it's in, don't tell me anything. I just play.
Well, you did do 4 solo albums, though.
Well, I did essentially it was 2 under my own name, and then Gordon Beal and I made a couple records with this company that actually sold. They were a company that sold, it's wherever you can get the money, right? So it was like these guys sold soy candles, and they also made jazz recordings. And so they decided we wanted to do that with them. So we made a Christmas record with them, which a lot of people consider their favorite Christmas record of all time. And we did another record of just various things. But that was a slightly different thing, but that was a lot of fun to do too. So that's what we sort of recreated, this Yellow record that we did together, me and Gordon, when I played at the Redwood Festival there and did some stuff from my own thing. So, I was essentially the band leader on that. But, like I said, it's, all of a sudden here you are 70 years old and you had a good time and, you can't remember a lot of it, but it was a lot of fun.
So when you did the two solo albums for Stony Plain Records, is that something you instigated or is that something Holger instigated?
Yeah. Well, no, I instigated it. Duke kind of, pushed it through with Holger, and there you go.
And what did you hope to accomplish? Was you hoping to establish a solo touring life, or just to record some of your favorite things onto vinyl or to CD?
Essentially, what I look at everything like that is that this is just what I wanted to play, songs I wanted to play, and what I wanted to do. And if it did that well, that would be one thing. But if it didn't, then I have a wealth of material to draw on whenever I play with someone and they want me to do a feature song or something like that. So I was not expecting to make a radio hit or anything like that. I wasn't trying to do that.
Okay, so you've worked with a lot of amazing musicians and people. I'm sure that you probably thought, "My God, I can't believe this opportunity."
Yeah.
Can you share, one or two of those instances and what you might have learned from those people and what you got out of that?
Well, if we're talking about like the blues people, the thing about all that was like if Albert Collins saw you there at the gig, "Where's your horn? Get up here and play." And it was like, no, go get somebody to get your horn, or go home and get it and come back here. And so you just played with people like that. So that would happen, independently. Whenever I went somewhere or something like that, I'd have my horn in the trunk of the car and just go out and get it. And with other people, we had a great time making a record with Pat Benatar. That was a ball. And it was a lot of fun. We were on the Tonight Show and everything with Johnny Carson and Ed McMahon and stuff. And so there's a lot of things like that happened that were a lot of fun. We played the very short-lived Arsenio Hall show, and Billy Preston played with us because Junior Brantley, our piano at the time, I think he was ill or something. And so, do you guys mind if we have Billy Preston playing with you? No, that'll be fine, and that sort of stuff. Played with Dr. John a lot and stuff like that. So, that was a lot of stuff. Playing Carnegie Hall with Stevie Vaughan was fun and all that sort of stuff. So, the Clapton stuff with Jimmy was fun. Clapton's a nice enough guy.
So when we last spoke and at the Silver Dollar,
yes,
we spoke about that Carnegie Hall gig, which was for, I think, Stevie Ray's birthday party or something like that.
Yep.
It was recorded. It's a great album. And I remember you telling me about that experience and how good it was, but also about the night or two after.
I was in rural Rhode Island, in the shadow of several Ivy League universities, way out there in the sticks, playing at a biker bar with 20 people in it. And I actually played that same place like 2 weeks ago. So, and I told the owner I had more fun playing here tonight than I did playing in Madison Square Garden that was with Carnegie Hall with Stevie. It's true. You have a good time and you never really know what's going to be a great time. And sometimes things are a really good thing, but they're not that amazing thing, so you never know what's going to happen. Now, the Carnegie Hall concert, that was pretty damn good, but we were it was just a lot of fun. All the rehearsals and stuff were fun with Dr. John and everything, so it was all like a lot of great times.
Okay, so I was supposed to remind you about the Silver Dollar Room in Toronto.
Oh,
you said you had a story.
Well, not to enrich anybody musically or anything, but it was just so funny. The Silver Dollar was off of wasn't it on the same street as the El Macambo, or it was
Yes,
around there? Anyways,
Spadina.
just another dump in Toronto at the time. There was a lot of great places, but I remember like the Silver Dollar, like by the second set, or if we did a third set, it was the third set, there was like a half an inch of beer or something on the floor and cigarette butts. It was just disgusting. And we were there in the afternoon and we ate something, and so I went to brush my teeth with my electric toothbrush. Went into the men's room and I was like so disgusted. It was like, oh, I can't brush my teeth in here. So the little corridor there that looks out into a balcony or a patio in the back, I was just looking out the back, brushing my teeth. And this bouncer who had like a bone in his nose and tattoos on his face comes up to me and says, "Could you stop that, please?" And I said, "What? Could you stop brushing your teeth? We've had a lot of complaints about this." And I'm like, the people that are here in the afternoon are like the real serious alcoholics, and like somebody complained about me brushing my teeth, and he's like, for real. But this guy like had tattoos, like devil tattoos on his face, and it was just not so funny. Like next time I come to Canada at the border, they're gonna go, "Hey, you're not that fellow that brushes his teeth in public, eh?" Whatever. But it was like, so I just thought that was pretty funny that they have their standards.
Yeah, well, the fact that they would have many complaints about it.
We had a lot of complaints. Really? Really? So I always like that, and my friends from Toronto always go, "No, you're not. You've been going to a support group about that brushing teeth in public stuff."
Okay, so when you play with Jimmy Vaughan or Stevie Ray Vaughan or Albert Collins or Duke, how different is your playing for different bands?
Things are just different. Some things are different. A lot of it's really the same. We all came up the same way. So it's not like when you play like with a rock band or somebody that's sort of more in that kind of thing. If somebody plays a solo and they take an extra verse, they got to have like a meeting the next day. And so with us, it's like more like a jazz thing. Like you just play, and then this is all I got to say, and that's it. Or I want to play another. I want to play more. And of course, if you play more, you better be good.
Right.
But that's all okay. And anything can happen. We have all had so many crazy things happen in the middle of a show, in the middle of a thing. A guy comes up, on stage with a gun pointed at your face, and all sorts of stuff. So everybody just. I remember Dr. John. We were playing in the South at this train station in some little town in South Carolina or something, and when he was playing, the train pulled up into the train station while he was playing. So they stopped in the middle of the song, and then they are all tapping their feet. And then when the train left the station, they all came back in where the song would have been if they had been playing. And, that's the sort of thing. It's just like, whatever, just whatever happens, I'm ready for it.
Did you ever question what you do?
Nah, no point in doing that. That's just that's how you get to be suicidal or something. So no, I just enjoyed every minute. The only problem I have is when things are slower and you want to kind of play, and that is a weird thing for that to happen, And then like right now, the season's a little slow. Coming up after the holidays, I got quite a bit of recording to do in January, so that'll be good. And then I don't have to drive around in the snow in January, so that'll all be fine. And then I get that, whatever that is in my head, out of my head, so I don't go crazy. And you wish you weren't married to me, for instance.
Tell me what your relationship with your instrument is.
It's I don't even think about that. I could say a bunch of bullshit stuff if you want, but it's really, it's not just a tool. It's really something that is very important to me, and I make sure that nothing happens to my home. Well, to give you an idea, just recently, when we were playing in Germany with Duke, I got it back up on stage. I thought we were through, and we did an encore. So I got this baritone sax. And at that point, I'm still kind of weak, and the stage is only 8 inches off the ground or less or something. But somehow I got caught in a wire and I started falling over the monitor and fell straight down on the stage. Guess what was lifted up above everything else was my horn. And I, could have smashed my face in or whatever. That's kind of how I feel about it.
Is there one baritone sax, or do you have multiple?
I have a couple. I met a guy about now at least 10 years ago now, who deals in vintage horns, and so he had this incredible horn that I use now all the time, and I played it, and I just said, He said, "That's your horn." I said, "Well, I don't have the money for it right now." He said, I'll keep it for you, and then when you get the money, this is your horn. So about 2 years later, he said, "Just take the goddamn horn and pay me, whatever you can, whenever you can, and it's your horn. That's it." So I have now two baritones. I have this one baritone, and then I have a really nice one with the low A, which is some horns have just the B flat, and the other ones have a half a note lower, but it takes this much more of 6 inches more of the bell of the horn. It's heavier and everything else, so I prefer the one with the B flat. But a lot of times you play and you need that extra note at the bottom. But so I have two baritones and I have two tenors that are really nice, and I'm still in the process of paying for most of them anyways. But it's I never had more than one horn prior to that, because you really get used to what your horn is.
When you say vintage, how old is vintage?
Oh, 60s.
Okay.
The tenor I have is 100 years old this year, from 1924, and it's just beautiful.
And what's the lifespan of a saxophone?
Well, it depends on what happens to them, and also the older ones, some of them are just in cherry condition, and then others. The metal was better then, no question, that they made it out of. So the metal can take a lot more abuse. But for baritone saxophones, it's just a bigger horn. So if they made it as strong, it would weigh way too much. So it's just not. It's more fragile than the other horns. So there's certain points in there. When I play a horn or I look at one, I look at these points immediately, because that's where all the wear and tear usually happens. And so if it's happened too many times, if you just look at it wrong, then it'll go out of whack. So I know all sorts of things about buying used horns, but that, like I said, in general, though, the metal is just far superior to what they're making it out of now.
But when you picked up the new old saxophone, did you know immediately that this was yours? I mean,
well, it just, I went, wow, I love this thing, and that guy said, "That's your horn. I'm going to keep it for you." But yeah, I sort of did, and some of them you got to get used to things and all sorts of stuff. But back in the day, I had a lot of different horns, and baritones are really quite different one from the other. So you had to really get used to a whole different way of. You have to play the horn the way it wants to be played, because it's just set up like that. So it's a different angle to keep the neck on and all sorts of things like that.
I wonder if I hear that your horn anything like the way you hear it.
Probably not.
Because when
I hear it, I usually when I record, and a lot of people like that, for the most part, you don't really like it. And then if you hear it like a year later, you go like, "Wow, who's that? That's great. Oh, it's you. Oh, no kid." And so that's how it works for me. Now but I think a lot of people don't really like how they sound when they record.
Okay, so I'm curious about two people, Greg Piccolo and also
Yep.
Duke Robillard. I mean, these are two
Yep.
people who've been in your life for a very long time. And,
Yes.
and I don't know if the relationship with Greg is different because he's a fellow horn player, or if it's the same thing because they're both musicians. But can you talk about each one of them and what that relationship and that musical relationship means to you?
Well, Piccolo and his wife were very nice to me when I first was in Rhode Island, and his wife used to invite me over all the time, for just to have dinner, and then we would sit there and listen to records and stuff like that. So there was all of that. The three saxes, me and Greg and Rich, to this day, it doesn't matter how long we haven't played together. As soon as we start playing together, there's just a sound like nothing else I ever heard. So we have all that, and so we still do gigs to this day, and I know we're doing the Founders thing where we play the Roomful of Blues stuff and this and that. So that's been a very long period of time, and then with Duke, just the same thing. I learned everything I could. Really, I learned everything from Duke. So I owe Duke everything. And so I talk to Duke usually when we're playing. Of course, we don't have to do that, but I talk to Duke. I just talked to him today. There was somebody I recorded with. And I said I got the mixes back from Kid Anderson's studio, and I said, Duke, you got to hear this. This guy. It's unbelievable. And so he listened to it. I mean, he's just still very enthusiastic about the music the whole time and just moving forward and stuff. So that's what we're all trying to do. So that's, you kind of separate. It's kind of like families where you don't really have to sit around and talk to each other very much because you sort of already did that. But what I always say, people say, "Oh, do you keep in touch with the Roomful of Blues guys?" And I say, "Do people on a chain gang sit around and write letters to each other after they get paroled? Are you kidding?" But it's kind of like that. It's kind of like a lot of things go unsaid. They just don't need to be.
But it must be amazing to have that kind of a musical relationship after all these years. And you probably, when they say, "Yeah, I know when he plays that, I know what exactly what to do." I mean, that's got to be the case with you guys, right?
Oh, sure. That's why Duke likes it when he usually calls me in if he's working on his new record. Sometimes it just depends. We do it different ways. Sometimes we all play together, but a lot of times he just calls me in and I just sort of play along with the tracks and think of the arrangements like right there. And because I usually, whatever I think of the first time is usually the best thing that I can think of, so I usually try and leave it like that. And then we sort of take what I played and make arrangements out of it.
With all the recordings that you have done, and I know they're probably all like your children, but is there a favorite? Is there anything like a solo or a piece that you've played that is a favorite to you?
Well, I really like, my records were a lot of fun for me to play on. We did a record with Sugar Ray when he first joined the band. I think it was Dancing All Night or some Dancing something, but with Roomful of Blues. And that was stuff that we were just doing at gigs. So we just played the whole record. It was just a ball. And I remember we were just having such a great time doing that record. But with Duke, every record I do with Duke has just been a lot of fun to do. But as far as what's your favorite, I guess you could call it like your kids or something like that. But it also is, I just kind of enjoy everything that we do and don't think too critically or the other way about things. It's all part of what you do. It's just, and there's more to come. So I suppose I like it like anybody would when things are working easily, but sometimes it ain't easy, and there's technical problems or there's whatever else. And one time we were playing in New York City, and Dr. John just showed up, and he played with us. And I said, "Hey, what are you doing here?" And he was recording the "Someday There's Going to Be a Better World" session with B.B. King, and he said, "We just got stuck. So everybody's taking 4 hours just walk around New York City." But we're stuck. Those guys at that level, they just were stuck. They couldn't get it. So everybody just take a break and go walk around and whatever else. So that's what happened. So he came and sat in with us, and off we go.
Wow.
But I said, "What do you want to do?" He says, "Well, let's just do something we can't fuck up." So we did Stagger Lee, and it was just the goddamnedest version of Stagger Lee, and that's the kind of fun you have playing with people.
Well, you've played with a lot of amazing musicians.
Oh yeah.
And not to discount who you are and what you've contributed.
Oh, I'm just a guy that I'd be getting coffee if I wasn't playing with them, so that's fine,
Well, thank you so much for doing this. I want my final question to you. I know this has probably been a bit of a difficult year for you because of your health, but at the same time, it's pretty amazing to see the friends that you have and the support you have. What has this year been like for you?
Well, it's been tough. Yeah, it's been tough, but you run into a bump in the road. So what? It's just that's your reward for not walking out in front of traffic. And so, okay, I got it. That's the way life is. Because I had no medical history until I was 70, like nothing, except for breaking arms, falling down drunk, and stuff like that. Or actually, I never broke anything until I stopped drinking. It was kind of odd like that. So there you go. There's your lesson there. But I, I had a benefit, and Duke was playing at the benefit. All these guys came down, and including the musicians, I said, Duke, everybody that's playing and everybody that's here, I've been insulting whenever I see them for the last 50 years. And he goes, well, it's working, so just keep going with it. So, but it kind of made me realize that there is a community out there, and there are some people there, and it kind of rekindled my faith in humanity, I suppose, or whatever. But I was really touched by it. It was very nice, and I also I do want to thank everybody that participated in that, and it really did help me out a lot. So,
And what's the future looking like? What are your plans?
Like I said, got some recording coming up, and then there's people to play with after the recordings come out, and getting more to California and stuff like that, and just more festivals, more gigs, more biker bars in the woods and whatever else. I mean, it's all at this point. I truly am glad to be anywhere. So everything has just been a ball, and get a call. You never know what's going to happen. You get a call, boom, boom, boom. There we go.
What have you learned from this year?
I didn't learn shit. But that's me. It's just takes me a long time to learn anything. But no, it's like I said, that people are truly that it made me feel good that people like what I'm doing and haven't found me too hard to take yet. So I appreciate that. And it's great to have you calling up from the past and saying you wanted to give me another crack at an interview. That was nice.
Well, I appreciate you doing this. I told you that you left quite an impression on me when we last spoke. So I'm glad we were able to catch up again.
Well, I am too.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Keep up the good work. You're doing a great job.
Thank you. Thank you so much for doing this.